There is a comforting myth that people make bad decisions because they lack intelligence. We imagine that if only we knew more, studied harder, or thought longer, our lives would naturally unfold in wiser directions. Yet experience quietly contradicts this belief. Brilliant people choose destructive relationships. Successful entrepreneurs ruin promising businesses. Loving parents say words they regret. Educated individuals sabotage their own happiness. The problem is rarely a shortage of intellect. More often, it is that our decisions are shaped by forces we barely notice. Every decision is made by two people at once. One is the person we believe ourselves to be, calm, rational, and capable of weighing evidence. The other is the quieter self carrying years of disappointments, fears, hopes, and invisible emotional habits. It is this second self that frequently holds the steering wheel. Fear has a remarkable ability to disguise itself as logic. We tell ourselves we are being practical, when in reality we are simply frightened. We remain in careers that no longer inspire us because uncertainty feels unbearable. We avoid conversations that could heal relationships because silence appears safer than vulnerability. We reject opportunities not because they are wrong, but because they ask us to become someone unfamiliar. Human beings often mistake familiarity for safety. We return to patterns that have already hurt us simply because they are known. The predictable pain of yesterday can seem less threatening than the unknown possibilities of tomorrow. This explains why some people repeatedly choose partners who cannot love them well, workplaces that diminish them, or habits that quietly steal their joy. The heart sometimes prefers a familiar disappointment over an unfamiliar hope. Another reason for poor decisions lies in our desperate desire for approval. We are social creatures long before we become independent thinkers. Somewhere within us remains a child who wants to be accepted, admired, and included. This desire is not weakness, it is deeply human. Yet when our need for acceptance becomes stronger than our commitment to truth, we begin making choices that belong to other people instead of ourselves. Many of our biggest mistakes begin with a simple question: what will people think? Rarely do we pause to ask, what kind of life do I truly want? We purchase things we cannot afford, pursue careers we never desired, and remain silent when honesty is needed because we imagine an invisible audience judging every move we make. Our emotions also have poor timing. Decisions made in moments of exhaustion, anger, loneliness, or excitement rarely reflect our deepest value. A single difficult afternoon can convince us to abandon dreams that would have flourished with one more week of patience. A brief moment of praise can tempt us into commitments we never genuinely wanted. Temporary emotions often pretend to be permanent truths. There is another subtle trap. We often confuse confidence with correctness. Someone who speaks loudly appears more convincing than someone who speaks thoughtfully. We become persuaded by certainty, even when certainty has no evidence behind it. History repeatedly reminds us that confidence is a personality trait, not proof of wisdom. Memory itself is not the reliable guide we imagine. We rewrite our past without realizing it. We remember failures as greater than they were and successes as smaller than they deserve. These distorted memories shape future choices. If we secretly believe we always fail, we stop trying. If we believe we never make mistakes, we stop learning. Perhaps the greatest obstacle to wise decisions is impatience. We want immediate relief instead of lasting peace. We choose the comfort of today, even when it creates the suffering of tomorrow. We postpone difficult conversations, ignore warning signs, spend beyond our means, and neglect our health because consequences seem distant while temptations feel immediate. Yet wisdom rarely arrives through speed, it grows through pauses. Sometimes the most intelligent decision is simply refusing to decide while overwhelmed. A night's sleep has rescued more futures than many complicated strategies. We should also recognize that every decision is made with incomplete information. Waiting for perfect certainty means waiting forever. The goal is not flawless judgment, but thoughtful courage. A good decision is not one that guarantees success. It is one made honestly with the best understanding available at the time. Compassion toward ourselves is surprisingly important. People who believe every mistake defines their worth become afraid of choosing at all. They delay, avoid, and overthink because failure feels unbearable. Ironically, this fear creates the very outcomes they hoped to escape. Growth belongs not to those who never make mistakes, but to those who can survive them without losing faith in themselves. Good decisions also depend on self-knowledge. Before asking what choice is correct, we must ask who is choosing. Are we acting from love or fear, from curiosity or insecurity, from generosity or resentment? The quality of our inner life quietly determines the quality of our outer decisions. Perhaps the aim is not to become people who never make bad decisions. Such people do not exist. The aim is to become people who recognize our emotional blind spots, question our first impulses, remain open to correction, and understand that wisdom is less about always being right than about becoming increasingly honest with ourselves. A meaningful life is not built through perfect choices. It is built through imperfect choices examined with humility, adjusted with courage, and remembered with gratitude. Every mistake can become a teacher if we are willing to ask not only what went wrong, but what hidden part of ourselves was asking to be heard. We often like to believe that our decisions are guided by reason. We picture ourselves sitting quietly inside our minds, weighing evidence, comparing options, and selecting the path that makes the most sense. It is an attractive image because it gives us confidence that we are in control of our lives. Yet, if we observe ourselves honestly, we discover that our emotions usually arrive long before our logic does. By the time we begin explaining why we have chosen something, our feelings have already nudged us in a particular direction. Logic frequently acts less like the architect of our decisions and more like the lawyer defending a verdict that emotions reached first. Fear is perhaps the most influential emotion of all. It rarely announces itself directly. Instead, it wears respectable disguises. It calls itself caution, realism, or practicality. A person may refuse a promising opportunity because they insist the timing is not right, when underneath that explanation lies a quiet fear of failure. Someone may remain in an unhappy relationship because they claim they are being loyal, while what truly keeps them there is the fear of loneliness. Another person avoids pursuing a lifelong dream because they convince themselves they are being responsible, when in reality they cannot bear the possibility of disappointment. Fear is remarkably skilled at borrowing the language of wisdom. Our decisions are also shaped by emotional memories we barely remember creating. Every disappointment leaves a small impression on the mind. Every rejection whispers a lesson that may or may not be true. A child who was frequently criticized may grow into an adult who hesitates before sharing ideas, not because the ideas lack value, but because the emotional memory of criticism still echoes beneath the surface. Someone who experienced betrayal may struggle to trust even the most sincere people. These old emotional experiences quietly participate in present decisions, often without asking for permission. There is also the powerful influence of insecurity. When we are uncertain about our own worth, we begin borrowing our identity from the opinions of others. decisions become less about what genuinely suits us and more about what earns approval. We choose careers that sound impressive rather than meaningful. We purchase possessions that signal success rather than bring satisfaction. We remain silent in conversations because disagreement feels too risky. Instead of asking whether a decision reflects our values, we ask whether it protects our image. Insecurity transforms life into a performance, and every decision becomes another attempt to receive applause from an audience that is usually paying far less attention than we imagine. Loneliness can be just as persuasive. Human beings naturally long for connection, but when that longing becomes desperate, judgment often weakens. People may accept unhealthy friendships because being mistreated seems preferable to being alone. They may rush into relationships before trust has been earned simply because solitude feels unbearable. Loneliness narrows our perspective until immediate companionship appears more valuable than long-term well-being. It persuades us that any connection is better than none, even when that connection slowly diminishes our confidence and peace. Our emotional state changes how we interpret the world around us. On days when we are exhausted, ordinary challenges appear impossible. During moments of anger, small disagreements seem like unforgivable betrayals. When excitement overwhelms us, obvious risks suddenly appear insignificant. The facts themselves may remain unchanged, but our emotional weather alters their appearance. Just as a landscape looks different beneath bright sunlight than it does beneath storm clouds, the same decision can seem wise or foolish depending on the mood through which we examine it. Another hidden influence is the desire for immediate relief. We often mistake the decision that reduces present discomfort for the decision that creates future happiness. We postpone difficult conversations because they make us anxious today, forgetting that avoidance often creates greater pain tomorrow. We spend money impulsively because it briefly lifts our mood, only to discover that the satisfaction fades while the consequences remain. We escape into distractions because they offer temporary comfort, even though they quietly postpone the changes we know are necessary. The mind is remarkably talented at inventing convincing explanations for emotionally driven choices. Once we have decided what feels comfortable, we search for evidence that supports our preference while overlooking evidence that challenges it. We believe we are being objective, yet our emotions have already selected which facts deserve attention. This is why intelligent people can arrive at remarkably poor decisions. Intelligence alone does not protect us from emotional influence. In some cases, it simply allows us to construct more sophisticated arguments in defense of choices that were never truly rational to begin with. Recognizing the role of emotion does not mean dismissing emotion as an enemy. Feelings carry important information about our needs, our experiences, and our humanity. The difficulty begins when emotions become invisible directors rather than acknowledged companions. When we pause long enough to ask ourselves what we are actually feeling before deciding, we create space between impulse and action. Within that space, fear becomes easier to recognize, insecurity loses some of its authority, and hidden emotional habits become visible enough to question rather than automatically obey. Human beings often imagine that they are drawn toward what is best for them. But in reality, we are more frequently drawn toward what is familiar. Familiarity creates a powerful sense of safety, even when it repeatedly leads to disappointment. The mind tends to prefer a predictable struggle over an uncertain opportunity because certainty, even painful certainty, feels easier to manage than the unknown. This quiet tendency explains why people sometimes remain in situations that make them unhappy, long after they recognize that change is necessary. They are not choosing happiness, they are choosing what their emotions already understand. This pattern can be seen in many parts of life. Someone who has spent years in an unhealthy workplace may continue accepting disrespect because it has become normal. A person who grew up in a home where affection was inconsistent may find themselves attracted to relationships that feel emotionally unstable. They are not consciously searching for pain. They are searching for something that resembles what they already know. The familiar carries an illusion of safety, even when it quietly limits growth. We often mistake recognition for wisdom, believing that because something feels known, it must somehow be right. The unknown, by contrast, asks much more of us. It requires trust without guarantees. It invites us into places where our confidence has not yet caught up with our potential. Every meaningful change demands that we temporarily become beginners. That experience can feel uncomfortable because it exposes our uncertainty. Rather than risk looking inexperienced, many people choose to remain where they are already competent, even if that competence exists inside a life that no longer satisfies them. Comfort becomes a cage whose walls are built not from reality but from habit. At the same time, we are easily persuaded by certainty itself. There is something deeply reassuring about people who speak as though they possess absolute answers. Confidence has a magnetic quality. It promises stability in a confusing world. We naturally assume that someone who never hesitates must know what they are talking about. Yet confidence and accuracy are not the same thing. A person can be completely certain and completely mistaken. History offers countless examples of individuals who defended false ideas with remarkable conviction, while those who questioned them appeared hesitant simply because they respected the complexity of reality. This illusion affects our personal decisions as well. We often mistake the confidence of our first impulse for proof that it is correct. An immediate feeling can appear so convincing that we stop asking questions. We become certain we know another person's intentions after only a brief interaction. We become convinced that one failure defines our future. We decide that a difficult moment means an entire dream should be abandoned. The speed with which an idea enters our mind often gives it an authority it has not earned. Social influences strengthen this tendency. We live among opinions that are expressed with extraordinary confidence. Friends, family, public figures, and online personalities frequently speak in simple conclusions about subjects that are actually complicated. Repeated exposure to certainty can make thoughtful reflection seem like weakness. Admitting that we are still learning may feel less impressive than pretending to possess complete understanding. Yet genuine wisdom usually carries a quiet awareness of how much remains unknown. There is another reason familiarity and certainty are so persuasive. They reduce anxiety. The human mind naturally seeks patterns because patterns create a sense of control. Even when those patterns no longer serve us, abandoning them feels risky. We tell ourselves that staying where we are is the sensible choice, when in reality we are avoiding the discomfort that accompanies transformation. Growth asks us to release old identities before new ones have fully formed. During that transition, certainty disappears, and many people retreat to what they already know. Our past experiences also shape what feels believable. If we have repeatedly experienced disappointment, hope may begin to feel unrealistic. If success has been rare, confidence may seem undeserved. These emotional expectations quietly influence every new opportunity. Instead of evaluating each situation on its own merits, we compare it to old memories. The future becomes imprisoned by the past because we assume tomorrow must resemble yesterday. In doing so, we overlook possibilities that have never existed before simply because they do not resemble what we have previously encountered. Learning to make wiser decisions requires becoming suspicious of both excessive familiarity and excessive certainty. When something feels comfortable, it is worth asking whether it is truly healthy or merely well known. When an opinion feels unquestionably correct, it is worth pausing long enough to explore what evidence supports it and what evidence challenges it. Questions often protect us more effectively than quick conclusions. The willingness to examine our assumptions with patience allows us to recognize that the safest path is not always the familiar one, and the loudest voice is not always the wisest one. Better decisions rarely begin with learning a clever technique. They begin with learning ourselves. We often search for advice that promises certainty, believing there is a perfect formula for every difficult choice. We read books, listen to experts, and collect strategies, hoping that wisdom can simply be borrowed. While knowledge is valuable, it cannot replace self-awareness. Two people can receive exactly the same advice and reach entirely different outcomes because each carries a different emotional history, different fears, and different expectations into the decisions. Before asking what the right choice is, we must first ask who is making the choice. Self-awareness requires an unusual kind of honesty. It asks us to notice not only what we think, but why we think it. A decision that appears sensible on the surface may be quietly motivated by pride, insecurity, resentment, or fear. We may convince ourselves that we are declining an opportunity because it lacks value, when in truth we are afraid of discovering our own limitations. We may insist that we no longer care about a relationship while secretly protecting ourselves from the possibility of rejection. The stories we tell ourselves are often kinder than the deeper truths we hesitate to face. One of the greatest habits we can develop is the ability to pause. Modern life rewards speed. We are encouraged to respond immediately, decide quickly, and move constantly. Yet many poor decisions are not made because people lack intelligence. They are made because people never create enough space between feeling and acting. Anger demands immediate words. Excitement demands immediate commitment. Anxiety demands immediate escape. A simple pause interrupts this pattern. It gives emotions time to settle and allows clearer thinking to emerge. The strongest decision is often the one that survives reflection rather than impulse. Curiosity also plays an important role in wise judgment. Instead of assuming we already understand a situation, we benefit from asking better questions. What evidence am I overlooking? What emotion is influencing me right now? Would I see this differently if I were calm? Am I reacting to the present moment or to an old experience that still lives within me? Questions like these do not make life more complicated. They make our thinking more accurate. They remind us that certainty should be earned rather than assumed. Another important aspect of self-awareness is recognizing recurring patterns. Every person has emotional habits that appear again and again. Some repeatedly avoid conflict until problems become overwhelming. Others make promises too quickly because they struggle to disappoint people. Some abandon worthwhile goals the moment progress becomes difficult. Others refuse to change direction even when evidence clearly suggests they should. Until these patterns are recognized, they continue shaping decisions without our consent. Awareness transforms unconscious habits into choices that can finally be examined. Humility is equally important. Many poor decisions persist because admitting a mistake feels more painful than continuing it. Pride convinces us that changing our minds is a sign of weakness, when in reality it is often a sign of maturity. There is great freedom in accepting that being wrong is not a permanent identity. It is simply part of learning. The people who make the wisest decisions are rarely those who never make mistakes. They are those who notice mistakes early, learn from them honestly, and adjust their course without allowing embarrassment to stand in the way. The people around us also influence the quality of our decisions. Honest relationships provide mirrors that reveal what we cannot easily see in ourselves. A trusted friend who speaks with kindness rather than flattery can help expose blind spots we would otherwise ignore. Wisdom grows in environments where questions are welcomed, where disagreement is respectful, and where truth matters more than winning an argument. Surrounding ourselves only with people who confirm our opinions creates confidence without growth. Patience may be the quiet foundation beneath all wise decisions. Many of life's most significant choices cannot be rushed. Important relationships reveal themselves over time. Meaningful careers develop gradually. Character is formed through repeated actions rather than dramatic moments. The desire for immediate certainty often pushes us toward conclusions before reality has had enough time to unfold. Patience does not eliminate uncertainty, but it prevents us from mistaking temporary emotions for permanent truths. The goal is not to become someone who always chooses perfectly. Such a person has never existed. The goal is to become someone who listens carefully to emotions without being ruled by them, who remains open to learning, who welcomes correction without losing confidence, and who understands that every thoughtful decision begins with the quiet courage to know oneself more deeply before trying to control the world outside.